G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video we're going to be going over some trade talk and going over each AFL club and discussing who their ideal trade targets are. It is of course nearing the AFL trade period for 2022. It's reportedly going to be one of the biggest trade periods in recent memory, so there could be a lot of trades flying through the door, so there's plenty to go over with each AFL club. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, that'll be much appreciated. And let's get into today's video. Rightio, as per usual, we'll go over in alphabetical order and we'll kick it off with the Crows. And of course, a player that they have been seeking for quite some time over the couple of past trade periods of past years has been 𝐼𝐴𝐺𝐵 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵, and looks like that deal is finally going to be coming to fruition. So Adelaide have finally got their man 𝐼𝐴𝐺𝐵 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵. They have really needed that kind of X-factor midfielder that can play forward or hop into the midfield that could really elevate the side. So I feel like that could be a play ticked off. And now moving over to a few positional problems they do have, I still feel their defensive's not being so great this year, especially in the key stocks. They really do need a bit of depth and youth back there. They have got 𝐼𝐴𝐺𝐵 that have been struggling to really develop at the moment, it seems. Billy Frampton could be leaving too. There's just the players that have really struggled this year, and I feel like a really good viable option is Will Gould from the Sydney Swans. He's a fellow South Australian. He's been unable to crack or even debut for the Swans ever since he did get drafted back in 2019, and he has been very good for the Swans VFL side, playing a key defender role and making the VFL team of the year, so he could do absolute bits if he were to move back home to South Australia and play for the Crows. Another fellow Swan they could be looking at is 𝘼𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵. He's really wanting to seek opportunity, unable to because of the Swans back six, and he has known to be a very good intercepting defender and could do a job down there at Adelaide. And I have included a bit more of a fantasy trade or a dream trade. I think Brennan Cox, South Australian, could he make a move back to South Australia? Adelaide could really use him from Fremantle with those intercepting abilities. Moving on now to the Brisbane Lions, and it is quite difficult to really pick out what could they improve on their list. I feel like overall across all areas their list is pretty strong. I sometimes still do feel that Brisbane's forward line, even though they can put on points, can be inconsistent at times with their tall forward line. They do have 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵 leaving, but it's still 𝘍𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐪, 𝐻ipwood. They have had a tall forward line this year. I still feel they could really do with a powerful forward that can play tall, can play small, and can find the goals. And for me, Jack Gunston is a very viable option. He could do maybe a Grant Birchall or Luke Hodge like they did years ago, where they played for the Hawks and ended their career up in Brisbane. I think Gunston is a really solid option. He's still very capable of booting 30-40 goals next year. He's a really good eye for goal, and it just gives the Lions an actual focal point in attack. I think it could be a solid trade for them. Also, I think their half-back line could do with a bit of depth. Dan Rich is close to retirement. They have Jackson Pryor running through there, Noah Ainsworth, who have been inconsistent. Of course, Darcy Wilmot had a cracking debut, but still would do with a bit of depth. I like the looks of Connor McKenna and or Liam Stocker. McKenna, of course, was in Ireland wanting to make a return to AFL, it seems, or reports are saying that, and I feel like he's the kind of player that wants to be maybe outside the Vic bubble. So I think Brisbane could do with his dash across half-pack, and why not? I think Liam Stocker could maybe not only play half-back, but could do a few centre bounce attendances for the Lions too. It's pretty much a no-risk picking up a delisted free agent. Moving on now to Carlton, and many players I have for them. There's a couple of options that they really could improve. Of course, Blake Acres is very close from signing for Carlton. I think that is a very ideal trade for him. They could really use with his outside rung. He lacks the sort of polish though, as we have seen in Fremantle, but he is a really hard two-way runner and an accountable player, which could really help with Carlton's outside ball use across the wing. They have been really heavily linked to Fisher McCasey, which I don't mind. They could do with an extra key defender. Of course, with Oscar McDonald, like Luke Parks getting delisted, they could do with a bit more depth, and they could pick up Fisher McCasey, the first round draft pick, and add him to the likes of Lewis Young and 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵 at Carlton. Bobby Hill's a player that I always really like the look of at Carlton. He is closer, or pretty much going to be a pie, but I still feel they could use some sort of diligent forward or a crafty little forward they do have, because Durden and 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵 and Fisher can be really inconsistent players. I've also included Tanner Bruin and Ollie Henry. I think they spark a bit of X factor. They can also play in the midfield. That would be really solid pickups for the Blues, I do reckon. Now for Collingwood, and it's most likely they do have 3 guaranteed plays coming in Bobby Hill, Dan McStay, and also Billy Frampton. 3 pretty solid recruits, I do feel. Frampton really does improve their defensive stocks, which they really do need to improve their depth in that area. Bobby Hill's a player that can really add into Collingwood's firepower, with Jamie Elliott having good years, and same with Brad McCreary, and potentially Ollie Henry leaving. Who knows? He's probably more likely to stay. And of course, McStay, It's a bit of an unusual trade, really. They're really heavily linked into his free agency or picking him up on some probably more expensive than usual kind of money. You'd think 𝐼𝐴 would probably be on cheaper coin, but he's not a player that's really going to wow the Pies, 𝐼𝐴, but he is really going to improve their structure of their forward line and can still be a very capable player, kicking 30 goals plus a season. And alongside that, players that I still could be really ideal options in the near future is Joel Amartey would be really awesome. They are still, I feel like the Pies really seeking some young key position forwards. If it isn't the draft, Amartey has really high upside. A player from the Swans that hasn't really been able to crack through the side yet. It would be really solid if he were to head back down to Victoria. And finally, Tom Mitchell is a player that's been really linked to the Pies. It's probably a bit more of an unpopular decision with Tom Mitchell going to Collingwood, but I still feel Mitchell would be a really solid player for the Pies. He's still really good in the inside game. He'd just be that extractor that the Pies really do need. You know, Taylor Adams being out of the side, they just really need that extractor from the contest. Give it out to Teqoy or give it out to Jack Crisp in the stoppage. He'd still be an important player if the Pies were able to pick him up, and I still feel it would be a solid option. Now for Essendon, and this is a really interesting team to go over because they have massive cap space. The most two expensive players on their list in 2022 was Dyson Heppell and Michael Hurley. Hurley is now retired. Dyson Heppell is looking like he could move out of the club as a free agent. So they've got money to spend. And I think two options they've got to be looking at is superstar players. I like the look of Josh Dunkley and Jordan Teqoy. I think they would fit in the midfield so well. They've always been a small midfield, Essendon, sort of one-paced as well, where they just get bashed and contested ball sometimes, and a big-bodied midfielder like Josh Dunkley could be the answer. Same with Jordan Teqoy as well, bringing that X factor to the side. Of course, they do have Jake Stringer, but he has been injury-prone and looks like he maybe could be slowly declining given his age. And they also have been linked to 𝐼𝐴, which does look very good in my opinion. Can even play in the midfield if he does get the opportunity to do so, and also help out down back. Moving on now to Fremantle, and of course, it's been in the news pretty much all year with Luke Jackson and the speculation of him going to Fremantle. Even though I feel it isn't the most team needs idea, he can still make a solid impact if he does move to Fremantle. Him and 𝐼𝐴 would be awesome as the tandem ruck, and also give a bit of a ruck relief role for Shaun Dux, who has pretty much been the solo ruck for Freo all this year, alongside Rory Lobb, who has been pinch hitting, who looks like he is on the leave too. So Jackson, he'll come in and make an instant impact for Fremantle, I do reckon. Play a lot more forward, and just the tandem ruck with 𝐼𝐴 could be something special. And another player, look, I think it's a bit of a, a out of left field kind of decision, but Jack Gunston for Freo, why not? I think he could be a solid option for Fremantle. You can't really see Gunston going to WA, but just looking at Freo's forward line, it can be inconsistent. They can struggle to put on points, and a player that can really find the goals is Gunston, and would give Freo an extra focal point in attack. Moving on now to Geelong, and this is an interesting club in the trade period. Of course, will be a destination club, you'd think, as they were the minor premiers this year. And there's a lot of names been circulating the Cats. Of course, Josh Dunkley and Hopper are two big ones. You look at Dangerfield, you look at Guthrie, you look at Selwood, late 20s, early 30s, they are getting on. That have a lot of aging players on their list, so they need a bit of, I feel like a replenishment of inside midfielders, and I really do love the look of, Hopper or Josh Dunkley. Two players are more likely going to be going to different clubs if they do choose to leave, so that kind of leaves the door open, still needing a player. And I really like the look of 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐴 from Hawthorn. Had a terrific start to his career, and he's just unable to really continue that. And the Cats is one of the best clubs for player development, and he is a fellow Geelong Falcon boy, so if he were to move to the Cats, I think he could really thrive under their staff over there and kind of get his career back on track. He would be a solid option, I feel. Another player that could really head down to the category is 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴 brothers with Jack Henry, and he is a player with tremendous upside, a very good young talent. He's just not getting the game time at Collingwood, and because of that, he might want to seek opportunity. And I believe with the Cats, they do want to seek, of course, as much young talent as possible, and out with the old, in with the new. They'll just get the replenishment with Ollie as players, especially like 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴, a tall midfielder that can play in the mid and can go forward. Also, two players I think could really benefit the Cats is Tanner Bruhn and Lloyd Meek. Especially Bruhn though, because he's wanting to, of course, move back to Victoria. A fellow Geelong Falcon boy too would give the Cats an extra, sort of X factor, or just an extra depth kind of play in the forward line and midfield. And Lloyd Meek, finally, I think is going to be on a lot of clubs' radar. He looks pretty much a player that has to be moving if Luke Jackson is to leave. There's barely any space for Meek to even play a game, and can be really used as a backup ruck or just a depth ruck And I think given Geelong's look of, Stanley and Blitzars are aging and 𝘼𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 is very injury prone, he could be really fitting down there at the category. Now for Gold Coast, and a lot of options they could go for here. They do have plenty of options in free agency. I do feel Dyson Heppell and Johannesson have been heavily linked to the Suns. That just gives them a bit of experience, especially down back, because the Suns, in my eyes, are still a very young side. They've got 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 and 𝘧𝐿𝐼 in mid-age, and then Baderick, who looks like a very handy youngster too. So the plays, the inclusions of Johannesson, that gives them a bit of dash, and Heppell giving them a bit of experience and leadership could really help the Suns side next year. Also another one, Conor McKenna could be another option for the Suns, and alongside Oleg Markov could give them a bit more dash across the half-back line if he is 100% certain, McKenna, to move back to AFL football. And the main man I feel like they could still go for is Teqoy. This is a very unlikely deal, a chance to happen, because I feel like Teqoy, if he were to leave, would probably stay in Victoria. But why not the Suns? I always feel like it could be a really fitting move for Teqoy. Get away from the media, up there in Queensland, could be an absolute star for the Suns. And they do need X factor as well, with Isaac Rankine leaving. Now for GWS, and this is probably one of the most intriguing teams to go over with the trade period, because of course they do have most likely Taranto and Hopper leaving, both going to most likely Richmond. So that would create the debate of who would they get in return of alongside draft picks. Would they get players? And two players I reckon they could get through the trade is Ivan Soldo and Collier Dawkins. With Soldo, of course, Giants do have plenty of rucks on the list. They've got Flynn, they've got Briggs, they've got Bruce, but Bruce is pretty injury prone and Flynn can be quite inconsistent. I feel Soldo is a very good tap ruckman. He could do a really important job around the ground. Has the ability to go forward as well, which is another area I reckon the Giants do really like down the forward line. And especially I really like the look of Collier Dawkins. If it isn't the Giants, I think he could be moving to another club. He's a really handy first round pick. He's a special player, really good, just explosive kind of tall midfielder that could really do bits for any other side. And with the inclusion of Hopper and Taranto, it's really hard to see Collier Dawkins get a game for the Tigers now, so he could be on his way out. Looking at their forward line, it is really always inconsistent with 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 and Jesse Hogan and Jake Riccardi, who's always been in and out of the side. So players I like the look of is one of them being Jack Gunston from Hawthorn. He is still weighing up his options, and you have to think a lot of clubs will be interested in his services. Just probes to be a smart and diligent forward that would really help out the Giants forward line, which does have its struggles, especially with the most likely departing players like Tanner Bruin and Bobby Hill. Another player I like the look of is Sam Weideman, being linked to moving out of Melbourne, could really be a nice handy key forward for the side. And finally, a bit of an unorthodox decision, Josh Corbett. I've always liked the look of him up at the Suns. He could maybe be moving to a new club, and he has been linked as well to move to a new side. A really good contested mark, Josh Corbett. Now for Hawthorn, of course, their main man they are targeting is Karl Amon. It could really help out their midfield. I really do like the deal, giving them a bit of outside run and adding to their midfield, which has been known to be quite one-paced and probably unless one of not the greatest midfields in the competition. So alongside Karl Amon, other players I've got is Tanner Bruin. They've been linked to the Hawks as well. That will just give them a bit more X factor in that midfield, and also the ability to go down forward. And considering that the big boy McAvoy has retired, will they want to sign an experienced ruckman to go alongside Reeves? And Reeves has been out. They've been really struggling with rucks. Also, when McAvoy was out throughout the season, they had to throw in Connor Nash and ruck. They had obviously Max Lynch when he was, and he was pretty, raw talent kind of ruckman. So it feels like they might maybe want to target a bit of experience. And for me, I feel like two experienced ruckmen they could go for is Grundy and Goldstein. But Goldstein the other day did re-sign with North Melbourne. So for me, they should be targeting Grundy. Getting a big man like Brodie Grundy in would really help out the ruck work and just improve their midfield, as it also enables the tandem ruck alongside Reeves, where Reeves has the ability to go down forward, and he is quite a good contested mark. Now for the Ds, and it is really hard to pick out and choose what they would need on their list. You can't really see the Ds having a massive off-season, maybe acquiring a few depth players and just going straight to the draft. But of course, the main man they are looking for is Brodie Grundy. I feel like it's pretty simple as this. If Luke Jackson is to leave Freo, they would probably most likely pick up Brodie Grundy. Simon Goodwin did say they do want to continue running with two rucks, so if Jackson's out the door, Brodie Grundy would be absolutely awesome for the Ds. Of course, it'd be awkward to, who would be the main ruck. Would it be Gawn or Grundy? Gawn has been playing a lot more forward in the second half of this season, so you feel like Grundy, or could be vice versa, who knows. But geez, the Ds would have two very strong rucks if it was the case, and Brodie Grundy would be a very ideal trade for the Ds. Now for North Melbourne, and this is a pretty interesting club to go over. It's like a kid in the candy shop almost, with the money they do have to spend, and of course Alistair Clarkson in the building, so it's turned into a bit of a destination club. They could be bringing a lot of recruits. We'll go over first Brad Hill. I think it is a very solid option for North Melbourne. Brad Hill would be returning to Alistair Clarkson back in those Hawthorn days, reunited, and not only that though, I think Hill would really give the North Melbourne a lot of just outside run they really do need. They've got the plays inside. You know, they've got 𝐓𝐴𝐶𝐞, they've got 𝘼𝐻𝐼𝐴 𝐿𝐵𝐷 runs in through there, Cunnington as well. I feel like on the inside they do well. They're a very good clearance side, North Melbourne. They do sometimes win the clearance differentials, but just on the outside they do lack a lot of run and skill, and I think Brad Hill would be perfect for that role. Jack Gunston as well. North could do with a few handy forwards down there, and the experience of Gunston would be quite handy for North Melbourne. Paddy Dow as well, I think could be a solid option. Would just give the Kangas just an extra depth, an extra midfielder in there who does show talents in the VFL. Matt Crouch as well. You know, there's just so many options for North Melbourne. I do like the look of Crouch if he were to leave South Australia. And of course, still one of the main targets for North Melbourne would have to be Griffin Logue from Fremantle. Really do need some defensive help down there for North. He's very good, a very tough physical player Griffin Logue is, has capabilities of playing the key defender role and also the ability to shift forward. Will just give North Melbourne some extra versatility. Now for Port Adelaide, and of course the main man they are looking for is Josh Dunkley. It's a player that would really help out Port Adelaide. Of course, Dunkley's girlfriend or partner is a netballer who does play in South Australia, so they'd be linked together. So it kind of does fit well together that Dunkley could be going to South Australia. And it's a player that Port Adelaide really do need. You know, 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 has just not really had the year. Their midfield's just been very inconsistent this year, Port Adelaide. Boat getting on. Willem Drew's been inconsistent, same with Wines. And Dunkley, alongside like 𝐴𝐵𝗹𝗶𝗶, they could, you know, do a bit of a rotating role. One in the midfield, one in the forward line, and vice versa. He'd just be a solid player for Port Adelaide. You feel Dunkley. And a player that's probably, you know, not the most exciting name. I reckon Tom Highmore. I think Port Adelaide's defence this year, you know, you can see a few of their names like Cleary and McKenzie and Jonas. They are really getting on. They could do with a bit of an interceptor, and I feel like Tom Highmore from St Kilda is a really solid option. He's a young player, intercepting player, could do bits for Port Adelaide. And also with the departures of Robbie Gray and Motlop for Port Adelaide, they are really starving in some small forwards and really need to improve that depth in that department. And it is reported that Willie Rioli is pretty much certain to move to Port Adelaide, which would be very fitting for the team at Alberton. A player that would most definitely come in and make an instant impact into Port Adelaide's tall forward line. Now for Richmond, and of course the two big names they do have is Taranto and Jacob Hopper. Most likely these two players will be moving to the Tigers, and it's really hard to see the Tigers moving anyone else in because they will be strapped for cap space, you do feel, and also draft picks. So we'll just go over the two. Both players would be awesome. The Tigers really do need inside midfielders. You know, Cochin and Dustin Martin are getting on. You know, Ross is a really promising youngster as well. They've got a few young players really rising up, I do feel, the Tigers. And Taranto and Hopper would be perfect. They are, you know, with many games this year, struggling on the inside game. And Hopper, you know, they haven't really shown much, Hopper and Taranto this year with injury. But we know what they're capable of being. Just clearance beasts, and especially Taranto, given the classy midfielder he is. Be solid options for Richmond in the off-season. Moving on now to St Kilda, and it's a team that I feel just need to keep on really investing in the draft. You know, they've had a really good 2021 draft with the likes of 𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, Mitch Owens and 𝘰𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 Malera. But if they are looking in the trade period, players that I really like the look of is, of course, Jordan De Goey. It's a team I reckon St Kilda just need a bit more X factor in their midfield. You know, inconsistencies from Jay Gresham and Jack Billings has really cost the Saints to really continue their surge in the second half of the year. So De Goey would just be an awesome prospect. Just give him a bit more of that clearance game and also the ability to go forward, kick goals. If it isn't him, players would still really like the look of is Ollie Henry or Tanner Bruin. That would really help them out with X factor. Henry has tremendous upside, and if he does leave the Pies, I feel like he could be an awesome player for any other club. Tall forward that is also capable of playing that high half forward role, especially Bruin as well. Another player I think could still do a really good job is Stocker. You know, they still do want, I reckon, a bit more depth added to their defence, and could do a job as well in the midfield too, Liam Stocker as a delisted free agent. Moving on now to the Sydney Swans, and it is one of those few teams where it's really hard to pick and choose. Would they need to bring in many players in the trade period? Not so much, but a player that is heavily being linked to and I reckon could be a really fitting trade is Griffin Logue from Fremantle. Could be a potential Dane Rampe replacement, and with that swingman of Griffin Logue in, he could be the second key alongside Tom McCartan, and it'd allow a player like Paddy McCartan to move to an interceptor role. So it would be really fitting. Of course, just said Dane Rampe replacement. And also the ability to go forward to a bit of a swingman would be a really handy acquisition for the Swans, I do believe. And their ruck stocks as well is on paper not so great. Tom 𝐼𝐿𝐴 very injury prone. Then you've got Lums as the backup. Then who else? I mean, Sam Reid can do the pinch hitting stuff. Naismith has been on the inactive list through injury. And I feel like they could go for maybe just a backup ruckman in the off-season. It could be a bit of a quiet trade period for the Swans. The player I do like the look of is 𝘬𝐿𝐴 to improve their ruck stocks. Move on now to the West Coast Eagles, and it is a team that is, of course, in the rebuilding stage. But you don't feel the West Coast will be in the rebuilding stage for so long, because they are a very successful club. When they have been in these situations before, they just rebound and go back up the ladder in very small amount of years. And a few players that do really interest me is they just need young talent. And a player I really like the look of is Devon Robertson. He is unsigned yet at the Lions by the time of recording this video. A free agent from Western Australia. Was a bit of a slide in the 2019 draft, and would be really handy for West Coast. Young leader that has really good capabilities of playing the midfield. It's just really struggled to get a game in the Lions' classy list they do have. A player I really like the look of is Paddy Dow. Probably one of those players that isn't really looking like he'll leave Victoria, but just looking at his circumstances of he just really needs to play seniors footy. I don't mind the move to West Coast for Paddy Dow. It's just a really good clearance game, really good stoppage play he is. Another player I really like the look of is Quinton Narkle. One of those players, again, playing in a very good side. Hard to see him get into the 22. Bit of a flashy player in the forward line, and also can move into the midfield. Western Australian too. Could do bits over there at West Coast. And finally, the Eagles really have problems in the ruck. You know, Bailey Williams, a lot of Eagles fans aren't really happy with him this year. You know, he still is young. Of course, Nick Nathaniel's getting on. Maybe they could pick up from a fellow rival club, Fremantle, pick up 𝘬𝐿𝐴. I feel like he could be pretty handy for the Eagles. And finally, the Western Bulldogs, of course, their needs is their spine, especially in the back line. They've had many inconsistencies this year, and the player they are wanting to bring in, or is pretty much certain to come to the Bulldogs, is Roy Lobb. It's probably one of a bit of a head scratcher kind of decision. Does that mean Lobb will play most likely forward? He's capable of hitting, being a pinch hit in the ruck. Would that mean that Norton moves back for it turns into a bit of a swingman and he could move back? Of course, 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐴 𝐼𝐴 and Sam Darcy are developing really nicely, but I still feel they are really interested in bringing in a few other players, and I feel like a few ideal options for them is Griffin Logue as well. If it isn't the Sydney Swans, there's many Victorian clubs that would be heavily interested in Griffin Logue. He is a very capable swingman and playing a key defender role, where Gardner and Cordy and just Keith have been very inconsistent this year. And another player from the Sydney Swans, Lewis Melican, really wanting to, is open to a trade, just wants a lot more opportunity. Melican has just been starved to really being able to play in the ones for the Swans, and I feel like for the Bulldogs he'd be a very viable option for the Doggies. So everyone, there was every AFL team's most ideal trade target for the 2022 trade period. Thank you very much for watching today's video, and of course the trade period is one of the most debatable topics of the AFL calendar, so I'd love to hear your fellas thoughts down below. There is a hell of a ton of players I haven't included in today's video as well. There's just so many players circulating reports. It's just crazy, you know, the reports that come through each day. So yeah, there's just my speculation, just thoughts on what clubs' needs are and ideal trade targets they could go for. So everyone, once again, thank you very much for watching today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you wanted to enjoy today's video. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, guys.